Any blockage of the nose or pressure in the actual sinonasal cavity, obviously very painful, but the long-term effects are really, really bad. If you stop breathing through your nose, eventually will actually lead to a cascade of effects.
As women, your ovaries are more protected in your belly than compared to men whose testicles are literally right there with no protection whatsoever, similar to your brain. So as with all of your organs, like your body is actually progressively absorbing radiation. It's called the lossy medium.
I totally believe if you are not enjoying what you're doing, you are gonna drop it. If you're on a diet and you're eating stuff that you don't like, you're eventually gonna say, this is not for me, right? You have to enjoy it.
This is Vibe Science, a top 100 wellness podcast presented by the Radcast Network, breaking wellness barriers and making health truly personal. Here's your host, Ryan Alford.
Talk to me, doctor. You know, my wife suffers from a lot of nasal, problems like that. She'll get sinus infections seemingly 3-4 times a year. So we need to get one of these, number one. Number two, but when she has a sinus infection, she does have, and it sounds like you may have had this yourself, doesn't feel good. Like it feels like she's just sick. Yeah, she's got congestion, but she just feels bad. Is this helping with that as well?
Yeah, so that's it. So I think you touched on something important. So our trial was 2 weeks. And this is important because we actually replicated the first pharmaceutical trials for intranasal corticosteroids in 2009. That's what the FDA wanted us to do. So we did a 2-week trial. And we randomized people to get either their resonant frequency based on the shape of their sinus or a non-resonant frequency, just sounds that were intermittent. And you asked about the efficacy. So we showed that the people with the resonant frequency over time improved. So 2 weeks later, their nasal symptoms dropped by almost 50%. And we actually have endoscopic evidence. I'm happy to send you videos that show you the cavity changing. So coming back to your wife's question, sinus infections suck because they ultimately there's inflammation and your nasal cavity gets blocked. So you can't breathe through your nose. If you don't breathe through your nose, you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain. If you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain, you're usually feeling fatigued. You're usually feeling foggy. More importantly, what it does is if you block your sinuses, and this is a Nobel Prize winning discovery that scientists made in 1991, I believe, you are killing the nitric oxide production in your body. The nitric oxide molecule is the most important molecule for respiratory health, immune health, and making sure that your entire respiratory system is carrying oxygen appropriately to all the parts of your body to energize your body, right? So when you get a sinus infection or a nasal cavity blockage, you essentially are shutting down the natural immune system of the body, number one. Number two, you're letting all of the bacteria propagate and actually do their bad thing. And over time, what ends up happening is if you use steroids or if you use chemicals, you're counteracting the wellness principle, right? In our case, we're using, a very precise mechanical vibroacoustic stimulus to keep the cavity open. And that's how we continue to help people. And by the way, there's no adverse effects. We've done now over 10 studies. We've got, I think, 7,000 people on it. And we've done real world studies that are published, with hundreds of people at scale. And, at most people say it doesn't work for me. We have an 80% response rate to this device and treatment, right? So, wow. I think to your question, any blockage of the nose or pressure in the actual sinonasal cavity is very obviously very painful, very, 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 very discernible. But the long-term effects are really, really bad. If you stop breathing through your nose, you eventually will actually lead to a cascade of effects that affect you, which is why we're now working with kids. We just got our FDA indication for kids down to 12. And that's a big one because the FDA wanted us to run the same study for adults on kids, and the kids stuff is that's why, this is a very personal thing for me. I don't want to ever have my kids use intranasal steroids.
What's Haven doing in this space? Obviously, you talked about the hat, the clothes, pajamas. If they're not Clark Griswold vacation level pajamas, I'm not wearing them. I got to have full outfit, long sleeves, long pants. I joke, but I love what you're doing. The hat looks cool. You know, you got to look at, if you can do apparel, you know, you got to have some cool shit, you know, like,
Yep.
so
One
you
of
can block
our
some EMF, but it can't block the vibe, you know, like cool vibe.
agree. One of our early advisor is the former president of Lululemon. And
that
he's
helps.
been pushing us for years towards better, nicer, comfier clothing, and we're getting better every day. We're in a good spot. I'm saying this, it's like it's not comfortable. We're in a great spot, but he's been relentless about keeping the good vibes, as you said.
Yeah, athleisure wear is like
Indeed.
the one of the highest selling. I love that name. I don't know, probably Lululemon came out with it, but athleisure, you know, that's for the, you know, the chicks walking around with yoga pants, you know, but eating a Snickers bar, and then the guys they're sitting on the couch watching football, but got those comfy pants on. It's funny. I don't know. We like to blend, you know, athletes and leisure wear. I don't know, but it's comfortable. I know that they do make good shit.
Well, yeah, it's like the new evolution of how we're consuming, right? Like we're consuming more and more better for you stuff and products that make us feel good. And it definitely feels nicer to be in athleisure wear than to be wearing stiffer jeans and leather jacket when lounging on the couch. With Haven,
I like my tight jeans.
All right.
But
To each their own.
they're not as comfortable as my joggers. You're right. What all are we doing with Haven?
So with Haven, I mean, we believe we're creating the next category after athleisure, which is health protective apparel that actually do something with regards to keeping you healthy and making you feel good. But the story behind the creation of Haven is my background is I'm a scientist, and as part of my first job after college, I was researching the genomic patterns of prostate cancer, came across all the studies about EMF, went down the rabbit hole, and realized that we were going towards more and more exposure, as we just discussed, and not less. And that as the studies would come out, because there is always a big lag between when the studies are being done to when the public is actually aware of them. And we can look at tobacco as one good example. It took 10 to 20 years between the moment where we knew from a scientific perspective, it was bad for you to the public knowing. And so anyways, figured out that as the word would get out, people would have a rightful need to want a solution. And as we mentioned, we can't shield the devices, otherwise they don't work anymore. If we're turning off your Wi-Fi, you don't have Wi-Fi anymore. If we're blocking EMF from your cell phone's not connected to the internet and not receiving any calls and texts. So the only thing we can do really is protecting the body from that EMF exposure. And so we took inspiration from spacesuit technology. Spacesuits have an inner layer that blocks radiation from when astronauts are in space. And we integrated this within a proprietary fabric, wave stopper, that blocks 99.7% of EMF from 450 megahertz to 40 gigahertz, which covers the entire spectrum of our electronics devices today. And then we turn this into everyday basics, everyday essentials that protect your essential organs from EMF exposure. And the way we're thinking about it is we're essentially building, with Wave Stopper, we're building the seatbelt for EMF, which is we still want to use technology. We still want to live life in modern high rises like Chris and enjoy our view of the ocean. But at the same time, we want to limit our exposure and hopefully keep living a longer, healthier, and happier life by reducing our environmental exposure.
Yeah. I mean, you got to protect those balls, you know?
You do. That's where we started.
Chris, you hadn't had kids yet. I don't know. You got to protect those guys.
I know. I thought I was doing all right with the organic cotton boxers, but that doesn't protect against all the EMF radiation. You know, it's like we're getting attacked from all sides here, guys. It's tough.
I know we hear about everything more because there's proliferation of news and social media and all this stuff, but it's just like you said, it's proven that fertility rates are lower than they've ever been, and it is seemingly as much the guy as it is the girl, and if not more sometimes. It's not a coincidence. It's just fact. And, there's only so many things that can be causing that. It's hard once you see the data to not know that it's related to things like this on some level.
Yep. And there are other factors too, right? Like our lifestyle, sitting more can hit up our testicles and other factors. But today we have enough data to know that this has an impact. And so for people who are trying to conceive, that is definitely one aspect where they can focus. And fortunately for men, our cycle of spermatogenesis is actually fairly short. For women, that's a different story. We have less studies on the topic, but women have all of their eggs, oocytes already created since birth, and they're not producing new ones. And it's very few studies on the question because it's much harder to study women fertility compared to male fertility. But if the few studies that we have seem to indicate that it has an impact on oocytes as well. And in this specific case, we're not reproducing them over time. And so that impact could also lead to more dire consequences. Now, with that being said, as women, your ovaries are more protected in your belly than compared to men whose testicles are literally right there with no protection whatsoever, similar to your brain. So as with all of your organs, like your body is actually progressively absorbing radiation. It's called a lossy medium. And so the organs that have the most exposure and the least amount of tissue between them and the source of exposure are the organs that are likely the most impacted by EMF exposure. So brain, testicles, these are the two that are most exposed today.
You hear about cortisone shots or things like that. How does
I would say
that's the biggest thing in pain with pain clinics, right? Is they just hand out cortisone shots.
Unfortunately, that's their only tool. That was it because if you have a hammer, that everything looking like nail. So if that's the only that's the only tool they have, then they're going to give it to you temporarily. You're going to feel better, but that's going to cause bone degradation. It's going to cause local tissue deterioration. So in the long run, you're really shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, it's a band-aid.
So stem cells is an option for doing it the right way, or is it again different tools for different things?
Yeah, steroid. Overall, I think for very short-term relief of symptom, it's okay. However, you are dealing with the devil, that the devil said, I'll make your pain less, but this is the price to pay. So you are paying a price. Whereas if you are doing regenerative therapies, that has no downside. It's not going to degrade you over the long run. Yeah. It's only going to enhance you. Then you are wiser in choosing to do this. Yeah, I think it's way better than anything steroid. It modulates the immune response, right? A steroid, and the stem cells does just that without all the side effects.
Dr. Kong, what do most people come to you for? Like, you obviously have a practice. Like, what are the most common things you're helping with regenerative health?
I would say 80% of them come to me for very severe and chronic conditions that they have no relief from with their doctors. They've tried everything. So the other 20% are people who are really healthy. They could be range from age, 35 to 90, right? But they are fairly healthy. They don't really have anything majorly wrong, but they want to stay young. They want to really function at a higher level. But the other 80%, it goes from very young autistic kids. We do specialize in helping kids with autism. Of course, I'm a trained psychiatrist. We also have a trained pediatrician
on our team. So we have a fantastic team, at my clinic in Los Angeles, because, every doctor shines in their different specialties. So we do have a team that help with autism kids. So we have a lot of autistic children. We have a specific protocol for them. And we also have people who, like I mentioned, from head to toe, right? All kinds of internal organ issues, a lot of autoimmune diseases. So I love treating autoimmune conditions. It seems so difficult by the conventional medicine, but to us, I think we have a very elegant way of helping the body between stem cells and peptides and supplements and our laser light and ozone. So we have a whole range of tools. And then, a lot of sports injuries, of course, and chronic osteoarthritis, back pain. So all these are very, very common human conditions that we have really good solutions for. So, and then rejuvenation, the beauty aspect. So people may come to our clinic for hair restoration, for facial rejuvenation. And we also have a great way of helping with sleep apnea. Very non-invasive, very inexpensive way of using laser technology to tighten the airway. It's pretty amazing because people drag around with the CPAP machine, but we can fix the problem with a very simple laser procedure. So so a whole range of treatments.
Wow,
Chris, you could use some of those beauty techniques. You're not beautiful enough already.
I'm getting a little wrinkled in the Miami sun. I definitely could use a hydrofacial.
So says the old guy to the young guy.
The skin always needs an extra TLC. I've seen it from my mom. I remember, looking at my mom's skin below the neck. Oh my God, it's so, soft and smooth and fair. And then above the neck is like, whoa, that looks like a different person. It just shows you that the sun damage, the environmental toxins, it makes a big difference. And it's probably why not only we do that, I actually just did one procedure on myself, just the Photona treatment at our clinic, the laser light treatment. I haven't done it for a while. So between stem cells and a little bit of laser kind of acceleration of rejuvenation. And then I also developed a skin cream called Chara Omni, which is a 100% natural cream that have stem cells and peptides in it. So the combination of the three, I think it's kind of magical. The stem cells, of course, I've done it myself regularly in the last 8 years on a very regular basis, every 3 months. So I think it's just a matter of whether or not people wants to capitalize on this new technology. It's here because there are only 2 other people I've met that have been doing stem cells on a regular basis, at least twice a year for over 8 years. And they all look 10 years younger than their age.
Oh,
so
dang.
Yeah.
I didn't get that. I want to look 27, Dr. Kong.
Okay. You know what they say, right? If you stay well for a while, for just a few years, there's so many more technologies coming on board. All of a sudden, that can keep you stay even younger. Dial back, walk
you
even
can stay
further.
ahead of it.
And then you escape they escape velocity. Just escape the curve.
Joy is one of the 6 principles of wild flow. I mean, I don't have to ask it, but I think for the audience, why is that so important with sort of the physical and mental transformation?
That's a good question. I totally believe if you are not enjoying what you're doing, you are going to drop it, And if you're on a diet, right, and you're eating stuff that you don't like, you're eventually gonna say, this is not for me, right? You have to enjoy it. It has to be a joy to eat. If it's not a joy to eat wherever you're eating, I mean, if you're a vegetarian, whatever you want, but if you can't make it become a joy for you, it's not gonna work in the long run. I'm totally convinced with that. So I think the challenge is to understand how for those things or movements that are good for you, how do we make them become enjoyable? And that's why I feel that one of the biggest pillars of the wild flow method is joy. If it's not there, it's not going to work, whatever you're doing.
The whole principle here is like the notion of active longevity, which is a little bit of what you're talking about, calling on things when you need it and being able to live. When I hear the word longevity, yeah, it's living long, but it's living long well, living long, doing the things and being able to call on them when you want to, like whether you're 50, 70, 80, it's one thing to be 70 or 80 and to be living, but when you need, it's not saying you're going to suddenly lift 300 pounds like you did when you were 20, but calling on, I don't know, just your strength or things, movements that, I don't know, over a long period of time, having the wellness to be able to do and live at a high level. That's what this feels like.
And when you break the barrier of 50, 55, that becomes I think that becomes a really important decision, because if you don't decide to go on the path of active longevity, you go downhill really fast. And if you decide to go on the path of active longevity, you can sustain your strength and your functionality for many years. I'm sure you've seen people that are 65 that are ancient, and you've seen people that are 65 that are strong as hell, and they can ski, they can do whatever, play tennis hard or bike. And I think I see it as you have the choice to have your body become the vehicle so you can enjoy the adventure of life the way I see it, or the obstacle so you can't enjoy the adventure of life. Because how many times have you said, well, I'm going to go on this trip, but right now I'm out of shape. That's an obstacle, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting, something kind of connected for me. And we talk about on this show, mind, body, energy. The mind stays stronger than the body a lot of ways, like short of having some kind of degenerative thing, but like generally speaking. And if your mind's telling you want to do these things, you're wanting to, but then your body becomes like you're a slave, like, right? Because you can't, to your own body, you cannot do those things that your mind wants and thinks about because you haven't taken care of it. You haven't nourished it. That's why you have to, do all three. You've got to give them all, because I can think of very few things that would be as bad. And, when I think about like diseases and things that I would never want, none of us want to get sick, but like ALS, like when your mind is all there, but your body is just can't do it. It doesn't, you cannot. And it's like, that's just a prison, right? Yeah. It's like that's kind of the biggest thing. I don't know. I would want to avoid.
Yeah.
You got to start now, right?
I think you got to start now. And I think if you're blessed by not having one of those illnesses, it's almost I don't know if the correct word is an obligation, because I wouldn't say an obligation, but it is owe it to yourself and your loved ones to take care of yourself and be, as long as you can.
The content discussed on this show is provided for reference and educational purposes. The content is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice. Always consult your personal physician for medical advice and proper diagnosis.
Thanks for listening. This is Vibe Science. To learn more or watch full episodes, visit vibesciencepodcast.com. Here's to discovering your highest vibe.